My first name is Janice, Janice, Grant, Grant. I live right in this house, Aberdeen. Well, the house 430 is part of our land that we purchased in 1917, and my foreparents purchased that the same year that the Aberdeen Proving Ground, and that was all black land at that time. My mother and my stepfather built that house in 1960. With my husband's illness, I brought him here, and the income was lessened, and so I just fell into not being able to meet my debts. And I think that house should remain as historic. I think I was born into civil rights. My mother, my aunt, my grandmother, we have always been in civil rights. The pastor called me and asked me if the Freedom Riders could come here to stop, because they knew that my family had always been in civil rights. They knew that they could come to us for anything. In fact, it was a safe place for them to meet. We went out and sat on the lawn at Swan Creek Church and had a big sign saying, "Go to 430 Law Street." How they found it, I don't know, because we didn't have the things you have today, just put the address in. And they found it some way, came in, and we sat around and chatted, and they told the next stop. But we did it this way, because if we wrote things down and someone got caught, they wouldn't say, well, they're going this way, you can stop them and going this way. And when the Freedom Riders left, I left with them. Mississippi was our target. The Freedom Riders actually would go into the bus stations, and on one side it would have colored people, and the other side it would have white people. And every time we would go into the one, we would not go into the one that said colored. We would go into the one that said white. And of course we were beat up. We would go to homes and try to convince the people to let us take them to the courthouse to register to vote. Some did, and so we were able to register countless people to vote. There's some things that I remember when Mickey, Andy, and Jimmy were murdered in Philadelphia, Mississippi. All volunteers were to call back at 4 p.m. That was our deadline, so they would know we were safe. And Mickey, Andy, and Jimmy did not call in, so they knew something was wrong. Mickey Schreiner, James Cheney, Jimmy, and Andy Goodman. And Andy had just gotten to Mississippi that day. And the sheriff and 19 deputies followed them. They arrested them, put them in jail in Philadelphia, let them out, and followed them, and made them get out of the car, and immediately killed Mickey. Jimmy was chained to a tree and beaten with the chains. And when the doctors looked at his body, one of the doctors regurgitated. They'd never seen a body so broken like that. Well, the Native Americans had a fishing hole, and they saw their burned out station wagon and reported it. And so Rita went straight to Washington, D.C. She was a fearless somebody. And she told President Johnson, you better send some people down here. They're killing people. Send some people down here. And he did. He sent people down. And they were these big backhoes. They were digging up the dam. And we saw khaki pants that were buried one on top of the other. And Andy had soil in his hands. We thought he was trying to dig out because he wasn't dead when they buried him. He had been shot, but he was not dead. And then, of course, Mickey was killed instantly, Mickey Schreiner. Many of our volunteers were murdered. You only hear about these three, but there were about 57 others who were murdered that particular summer. And we were almost murdered at Ole Miss with James Silver. He wrote the book called Mississippi, the Closed Society. And he told all of us to lay on the floor because they were shooting through the house. And if we had been standing, possibly we would have been shot. But for some reason, they taught us things like this to try to guard your face and whatnot. But we were beaten a number of times. It's hard to talk about some of them. Like one girl was chained by her neck. We were told never to go out alone, but she did. And they put a chain around her neck and dragged her. But they did let her go, so she did live, you know. But I'm so old now, I guess most of the people are gone. All I ever knew all my life was civil rights, you know, standing. So we stood, even if we knew we were going to be killed. We stood up. And I would do that today if I had to. Mm-hmm. But I really feel that that house is a historical house and should be preserved.